Onto a story now that has really caused divided opinion. Businesswoman Busisiwe Mavuso left a meeting of Eskom and public accounts watchdog SCOPA in a huff on Friday. Mavuso, who's also an Eskom board member, had said the board and group CEO André Ruyter would not be the fall guy for the mismanagement of an ANC-led government. The ANC study group on SCOPA condemned Mavuso's conduct, saying her behavior was unbecoming. Well, in a moment we'll be hearing from Dr. Pali Lehohla and former SCOPA chair Themba Godi. Before we go into that, a quick reminder of what unfolded on Friday.
So either you behave yourself or you excuse yourself from this meeting.
I'll excuse myself.
Yeah, I think you best do that.
I think I should also. Thank you.
I think you should. Yeah. Then you had wanted to leave at 11, and so you were engineering this thing so
yeah,
you can...
suits me just fine.
Yeah, it does. And you'll be making fundamental recommendations about yourself and your very unprofessional conduct. It's, in fact, politics of the gutter as far as I'm concerned.
Unfortunately, we'd hoped to bring you a longer clip of that entire exchange, but nonetheless, let's get on to it. Former SCOPA Chairperson Themba Godi and former Statistician-General Dr. Pali Lehohla, good evening to both of you, and thank you for your time. Firstly, Dr. Lehohla, I know you've opined on this in the last couple of days, but before I get to you asking, what you make of all of it, Mr. Godi, you've been SCOPA chair before, watching what your successor then, how he handled that situation on Friday. What did you make of it?
Well, all I know is I would have handled it differently. Because I believe that in meetings, when things heat up, the chairperson should be the one who really try to cool things down and try to manage the meeting in a way that it does not get sidetracked, and that when there are such heated engagement, robust as they should be, they must never get to the personal. And I think that the country missed an opportunity for accountability, because I would imagine that instead of calling her inputs, theatrics, and others saying it was an insult, she should have been challenged to say, look, the issue at hand was why out of 23 recommendations on the completion of Medupi and Kusile since 2019, you have only accomplished 9. And she responded the way she did. Then, for me, she should have been challenged to explain how is the mismanagement of the ANC connected to these delays. And only thereafter can you then make a judgment that, no, your accusation is relevant to the issue at hand, or indeed you have a point that we may need to look at further as a committee.
Dr. Lehohla, what did you make of it all?
Don't put me into the rabbit holes of SCOPA. I think that Godi has dealt with that. I want to get out of that rabbit hole, and for that I want to go back to normal. Because what played out in SCOPA had played out earlier by the chair of president of Black Management Forum, where he said Eskom and the board and the executive are not delivered, and this matter is now a matter for the president. And he was addressing a much bigger issue. And in that bigger issue, I want to make the following points. Because the issue of Eskom is not this trivia of the 24 questions. It's about how administered prices got out of hand, driven by municipalities and Eskom. And then Eskom later forced to buy from IPPs at a price higher than Eskom was selling to customers. So destroying Eskom literally. When the NPC recommended to government to divide Eskom into 3, what reasons he put before us was Eskom showed monopolistic tendencies when Eskom was saying we cannot sell electricity at a price lower than how we buy it, which was the price they would have bought it from the IPPs. So now I want to go back to Van Bay, who was the architect of Eskom, and he said there are 2 fundamental pillars. Those pillars are an adequate and economical supply of electricity and the steel. We lost the steel. Now we are losing Eskom. You know what Van der Bijl is saying is actually what was said by the 2000 BC Qing dynasty of China, where he was talking about the ever-normal granaries. And in Van der Bijl's point is the ever-normal electricity, the ever-normal energy. Now, we are making energy no longer normal, no longer achievable, because we are subjecting it to market forces. One of the things that Deng of China managed was this ever-normal granary. For over 5,000 years, the Chinese have been believing in that mantra, to keep the prices of the pillars as low as possible in order that you can grow. We have failed to do that. Still, we want to fail to do that on energy. The questions then that SCOPA has focused on was, after dividing Eskom into three, what has that delivered? Not this laundry list of things. Is there a person? What is the audit? They are not unimportant. But to come and waste our time like that in SCOPA about that laundry list of 24 questions, it's a waste of time. We've got to ask the question, what is the ever-normal greed?
Dr. Lehohla,
and bolster South Africa's growth.
The question on many South Africans' mind, of course, is what you're alluding to. So what is the normal that we can expect when it comes to power supply in this country? Under the Ruyter, before SCOPA, during that period of accounting, had said that there's only so much Eskom can do, and they effectively are not in charge of formulating policy. And they believe that that has been a big hindrance to the ability of generating new capacity to add on to the grid. When you look at that argument, is it a fair argument to explain why it is that we are where we are today?
Well, I have my own reservations around management capability of the Ruyter, but I don't want to express that here. When I'm making the metaphor of the ever-normal granary, I'm saying in our case we should have talked to the value statement of Van der Bijl of ever-normal greed so that we can actually industrialize. The point is we have deliberately destroyed Eskom by arguing through the recommendation from the National Planning Commission that Eskom is showing monopolistic tendencies. Yes, of course, Eskom has to be a monopoly. But it is under regulation of the government so that you cannot increase administered prices to where they are. The government has failed to manage the monopoly because it is government which allowed administered prices to go out of hand, and then open that market for competition that is undesirable. So we have lost the ever-normal greed which Van der Bijl wanted. Now we created three boards. I wanted to see the three boards at SCOPA and answering for each of their role. We misdiagnosed the whole thing altogether. And now you want the Ruyter to manage three boards. You cannot create multiple interfaces when you are in a crisis. When a patient is about to die, you don't remove him from the bed, from the bed where he's dying. You've got to administer him very carefully. Now you have brought so many things. I mean, there's no business logic in here, there's no engineer, there's no economics, there's absolutely nothing. It's just accounting and politics. And now SCOPA has to be in this fracas. And Busi has to face this. But step back and think about what normal is. I think what we have now is an opportunity as a country to really look at the ever-normal greed. That's where we have to get back up to. Not a list of 24 questions. That's a waste of time.
Mr. Godi, ultimately, when this question of accountability, I mean, committees like SCOPA, in many ways, are the mouthpieces of South Africans because they're able to ask the kind of questions in a platform that you and I do not necessarily have the opportunity to do. Do you think that they are asking the right questions of Eskom, of its board, and most importantly, even of the Public Enterprises Department under which it falls?
I think that let's just separate the two. SCOPA deals with your financials as well as your predetermined objectives, whilst the Portfolio Committee on Energy is the one that deals with issues of policy. So SCOPA might tend to be a bit narrow in its approach without losing its strategic edge, because from where I'm seated, the problems at Eskom can no longer be limited to purely administrative inadequacies. And that's where political accountability should come in. And I thought the answer that she was giving, for me, was actually opening the door to say, let's get political accountability. Then you look at all the issues that the good doctor is raising. But why are we, because the board was appointed in 2018, and it was called the Fix-It team. So what, 4 years down the line, where are we, why are we where we are? So when you go into the root cause, then you look at the administrative problems as well as the political problems, which will include the policy choices that were made. I do feel that parliamentary oversight, and I've said even during my time, it could be better. But parliamentary oversight is a political exercise. It's not a purely administrative exercise, because it is informed by the politics of those who are in the committee. The ANC has a majority in all the committees. So at the end of the day, it depends on their level of tolerance of scrutiny, which is what I was able to do in my time. And what was the outcome? All the ANC guys who were in SCOPA did not come back. What you have now are all new people. That experience totally lost. So you see, even in the way they respond to issues. When she say it's an ANC mess, and the ANC member in the committee say, no, you are insulting us. How is that an insult? How is that an insult? Really? Really?
And it's been critical to the analysis about what unfolded, because there does seem to have been a reluctance to, accept what Mavuso was saying, that the situation Eskom finds itself now has come out of a failure of the ANC government.
I just come in. You know what happened? When I became SCOPA Chairperson, it was only the officials who were appearing before SCOPA. And I said, no, we need the political leadership to also come, so that when there are questions and issues that transcend administration, there should be political accountability. And there were many instances where we sent officials away when their political principles were not there. So if the minister was there, you would then have had to respond, to say, we as the governing party, we have done no wrong, if at all that is the case. But we know that's not true, because there is a clip doing the rounds on social media where some senior people in the majority party say, we dictated who should be put in at Eskom, who should be taken what. Everything comes to Lutule House. That's where the decisions are taken. So when she says this, you therefore can't dismiss it out of hand and say it is far-fetched, it is totally irrelevant. It is relevant, because ultimately the problems of Eskom have taken a political dimension in terms of policy choices.
I hear what you're saying. At the same time, however, Mr. Hlengwa is a member and an MP of the IFP, which is an opposition party. One would think it's not in his interest to in any way try and protect or even shield the ANC from any level of scrutiny. He seems to point down what happened to just the decorum of Parliament, and he felt that Ms. Mavuso was acting out of what is expected of somebody who is accounting before Parliament.
No, I think, like I say, I would have handled it differently. And, there are a lot of dynamics involved. When I was chairing SCOPA, I always said, you know what, if you want this position, you can take it anytime. I'm not going to compromise anything, especially for us who fought for freedom. We didn't fight so that a few people should mismanage what so many shed their lives for. So I don't know what pressures, what considerations are there currently. But all I know is that being in a parliamentary committee is a platform, it's an opportunity to speak on behalf of the people, to carry the aspirations and the wishes of our people. And as the good doctor said, to really act strategically and not just run-of-the-mill kind of questions that at the end of which you have no sense of what are the strategic challenges, especially for an entity like Eskom, which holds the economy of the country at ransom.
Ntate Lehohla, let me bring you in here. Ultimately, it seems to be partly, a lost opportunity in some ways. But how do we redeem the situation, at least to the extent that ultimately we have to ensure that there is accountability, that there is transparency, and that the current board itself, regardless of what it is they have inherited, is still able to answer for what is taking place under its own tenure?
Well, I think let me step back and talk to the chair of SCOPA, and we used to appear before Themba Godi. I mean, the chair of SCOPA is dressed in so much power. He doesn't have to roll into that space. He actually has to lift back and say, let me hear what you are saying. Because he can still listen and assess. The statement by Mavuso was profound, to say the ANC-led government is a mess. And she didn't mince her words. And as a chair of SCOPA, I say, this is too big. Let's hear. Illustrate why you say it's a mess. But then he rolled with her into, and pushed her into a pigsty. And then he had this nasty exchange with her. He really has a lot of power. So I don't think we lost the plot, because it was that very clip that has awakened South Africa. Otherwise, the questions were just too boring. Lifestyle audits. Has an expert been appointed? No. Look at that litany of 24 questions. I mean, they are not about the three strategic decisions that arrested the imagination of South Africa, of 3 boards. They must ask, what has the 3-board decision generated any possibility? How do we lower the cost of doing business through Eskom? Right. How do we allow the energy, IPPs, and the Eskom to survive? How do we handle in the current resuscitation of coal as a consequence of the Russia-Ukraine conflict? So how do we ramp up our coal production? The world is not going to punish us for imports that are produced of coal, because the rest of the world is doing so. These are the kinds of questions, of course, that should go to the portfolio committee, not to SCOPA. But they are not outside the realm of what SCOPA is doing.
All right.
SCOPA to be reduced to a technical committee, I think is the wrong thing. It has to look at the adaptive changes that have to occur, which Mavuso has successfully precipitated. And if we look at what Nomla has said, then we are in good space. Nothing is lost. It's now in the public space.
Dr. Lehohla,
in a dramatic way.
Let's leave it there for tonight. And Themba Godi, thank you as well for your time in this conversation.